this merry and bright December Saturday, I woke up at the crack of dawn and made a beeline for Florida's sugar fields once again. It was a big day ahead of me, as all the railroads in the state of Florida were gearing up for a busy holiday season, and it just so happened that today, 3 of these railroads were each putting their own spin on spreading the Christmas spirit. Like the previous 2 years, US Sugar would be running a special Toys for Tots Santa train, delivering gifts to several underserved communities, from Belle Glade to Lake Placid, Florida, pulled by steam locomotive number 148. Florida East Coast Railway would also be running their annual Toys for Tots Santa train from Bowden Yard to Miami after a 2-year absence. And finally, Brightline would begin their Polar Express excursion trains operating out of Miami Central Station. My day started out in Belle Glade, Florida, where after around 20 minutes of waiting, I began to hear a K3LA horn in the distance, and I knew that US Sugar's Santa train was finally here. The Santa train began pulling into the siding at Osceola Street at around 8 a.m., about 30 minutes behind schedule, and the 148 cleared its throat as it guided the train into the curve. After the train stopped just before the road, I figured it would be a nice opportunity to grab some drone shots of the train as Santa, Mrs. Claus, and his elves, with the help of the U.S. Marines, began to hand out presents. Today's train consisted of the 148, 4 passenger cars, and diesel power on the other end. And really, what's a better combination than Christmas and steam trains? And just like last year, today's U.S. Sugar Toys for Tots Santa train would make stops in Belle Glade, Clewiston, Moore Haven, and Lake Placid, Florida. Toys for Tots is a non-profit charity program coordinated by the United States Marine Corps Reserve that strives to deliver new unwrapped Christmas presents to less fortunate children across the country. These gifts are donated by people and organizations alike in various communities. The program was founded in 1947 by Major Bill and Diane Hendricks, and it's been an American Christmas tradition for 75 years, spreading happiness to numerous children and families across the country. It's always quite nice of Santa and Mrs. Claus and all the elves to take a bit of time out of their busy schedule to help the Marines deliver presents as well as joy to the children. Before Santa Claus appeared, I practiced a few drone techniques so that I could grab a cinematic shot of the whole train, of course within the drone's range limitations. As I took a closer look at the locomotive, I noticed that the top of 148's tender was lettered especially for the Santa Express, probably a nod to the Florida East Coast lettering the locomotive wore back in the day. I also wanted to take a closer look at the consist for the train, but the shrubbery made things a bit difficult, and the last thing I wanted was to be bitten by a snake, so I decided to leave it for later at Clewiston. The front of the locomotive was all decked out with Santa hats on the marker lights and a big wreath around the smoke box door. I wasn't quite sure about that diesel-style headlight the locomotive was equipped with, but in the end, steam is steam. After I got all the close-up shots, it wasn't long before Santa and his elves greeted all the children and families at the crossing for a bit of song and dance.
to thank everybody here in Belle Glade for joining us here this morning. Great day. We should have had it up north a little further for the food, but it's beautiful. Do I need to get down low? Right here in Florida. Thank you very much. Everybody have a great time, and thank you for supporting U.S. Sugar, Sugar Express, Santa Fe, and let's hear from U.S. Marine. Anybody else that just got here, let's get some pictures. Come on up. Thank you, Girl Scouts from Thru 10529. Good thing they had it on, so I got the numbers right this time. Just saying.
Now you can't miss them.
And of course, we got Team Santa. Ho, ho, ho. What's their prize?
As Santa and his elves prepared to board the train, I decided to grab one more drone shot, this time of the front of the train.
What troop are you from? 10529.
before the train would depart, one of Santa's elves decided to take a last-minute portrait inside the cab of Santa's reindeer. The train began leaving the siding at Belle Glade Diesel First at around 9 o'clock, and I headed to West Canal Street North, where I heard some nice stack talk from the locomotive. And now, let's follow the U.S. Sugar Toys for Tots Santa train from Belle Glade to Clewiston, Florida. Santa train pulled into the siding at Clewiston, America's sweetest town, at around 10 a.m., greeted by many anxiously waiting children and families. While Santa and his elves disembarked the train, the 148's crew would perform some maintenance on the locomotive and take on water. But the 148 and the Santa train weren't the only attractions here in Clewiston. Here, just in front of the U.S. Sugar's North End shops, sits a former Southern Pacific EMD SD40-2 locomotive, still in Southern Pacific's paint scheme, and is the first six-axle locomotive to be welcomed to U.S. Sugar's roster, unless of course you count 148. The locomotive started life as a regular SD40 and would eventually wind up on the roster of Helm Leasing Company, hence the HLCX reporting marks. Some features of the locomotive are the notch in the nose where the gyrolight was once mounted, and the horizontal headlight. Looking forward to seeing this one in service. The boxcar number 1225 was not used this year, as Santa now has plenty of legroom. This auxiliary water tender that caught my eye was used on various steam excursions in Georgia behind SNA 750 and ANWP 290. U.S. Sugar plans to restore it for 148 and 1504 in the future. Also near the parking lot were two old Case steam tractors. It's unknown if either are in operating condition. As 148's crew added water to the tender, I wanted to grab a few drone shots, but unfortunately, unlike in Belle Glade, the Clewiston wind just wasn't cooperating today. So instead, I took the opportunity to take a look at the consist of the train. U.S. Sugar 501 is an EMD GP40-2 locomotive built for the Milwaukee Road in 1966. The newest addition to U.S. Sugar's passenger car fleet is U.S. Sugar's Lake Okeechobee, a former Great Northern coach car purchased from the United Railroad Historical Society of New Jersey. This car adds a bit of extra seating for the Sugar Express. Also providing some extra seating capacity for the Sugar Express is the Southern Railway's Fort Oglethorpe number 664. The Fort Oglethorpe is a former Central of Georgia Bud 54-seat coach leased from the Southern Appalachia Railway Museum. The usual suspects included Sugar Express's Palmdale A former Pennsylvania Railroad lounge car used as a dining car for the Sugar Express, and Sugar Express's Miami Locks, which is a former Amtrak baggage car used as an open-air car for the Sugar Express. Before the train left Clewiston, I took a few more shots of the other side of the yard. The train began backing out of the siding diesel first at around 11 a.m. We will now follow U.S. Sugar's Santa train from Clewiston to Moorhaven, Florida. As with many trains, the Santa train was not immune to obstacles. Before the Santa train could continue on to Moorhaven, it had to wait for a U.S. sugar cane job to start backing into the siding. Just as the cane job finished pulling into the siding, the Santa train eagerly took off like a rocket, with no shortage of stack talk at County Road 720. The Santa train arrived at the next stop at Moorhaven right around 12 noon, and by now the train was beginning to make up time. I would have loved to grab a few drone shots of the train crossing the Caloosahatchee Canal, but it was just too windy to do so. So instead, I took the opportunity to get some gas and prepare for the last leg of the journey to Lake Placid. The Santa train left Moorhaven right on schedule at 12:45 p.m. And now, let's follow Santa's sleigh and his reindeer, number 148, from Moorhaven to Lake Placid, Florida.
we'd recommend it. And
At Lake Placid, I arrived ahead of the Santa train with barely enough time to set up my drone and grab some aerial shots. At last, U.S. Sugar's Santa train reached its final stop at the Lake Placid Historical Society, a former Atlantic coastline depot, just after 2 p.m. And this concludes my chase of U.S. Sugar's 2022 Toys for Tots Santa train. I would have stayed longer and chased the train back to Clewiston, but it was time to hustle back to the East Coast for FEC's version of this train. Since it was scheduled to arrive into West Palm Beach at 4:30 p.m., this meant I had less than an hour and 30 minutes to get there. On the way, I stopped by the Okeechobee Amtrak station, served by Amtrak's Silver Star. This revamped station was a nice departure, so to speak, from the makeshift concrete slab I saw many years ago. I continued down Beeline Highway for West Palm Beach, and to my astonishment, I came across CSX freight train M453. I also saw this rare CSX track geometry car, but this footage was taken the next day as I was focused on beating M453 to the next crossing. Finally, I caught up with M453 at Military Trail. 36th Street in West Palm Beach, eager children and families were anxiously waiting for the 2022 FEC Santa train, and soon a Leslie RS3L horn could be heard in the distance. With screeching brakes, the annual Florida East Coast Railway's 2022 Toys for Tots Santa train came to a stop in West Palm Beach a few minutes after 4:30 p.m. This was the first time that this train would run since 2019 due to the COVID pandemic, and I'm sure children, families, and rail fans alike were delighted to see it back. There did seem to be a few minor changes though since FEC was recently acquired by Grupo Mexico. Sporting the brand new FEC logo and a Grupo Mexico style paint scheme were two brand new Florida East Coast office cars used on special trains or just on the rear of freight trains. Santa and his elves were really riding in style this year. While Santa's elves handed out all the presents, there were balloons, there was music, and plenty of excited faces. For this train, Santa's sleigh took the form of 2 containers on 2 flat cars, just enough to carry all the toys for the children as the train didn't make as many stops as previous years. The train also had one engine on the front, number 426, an EMD GP40-2 locomotive built in 1980. The unit had recently been rebuilt by Progress Rail's Patterson, Georgia shops, returning with a perfect-sounding Leslie RS3L horn and FEC's new Grupo Mexico paint scheme. As intriguing as this train was, I still had Amtrak to catch, so I sprinted to the RTA where I came across train 91, the Silver Star, from New York to Miami. Not long after 91 passed, a northbound tri-rail arrived into the station with a Hyundai Rotem cab car in the lead, and recently rebuilt former Amtrak F40PH-3C number 810. It's nice to see these old veterans given a new lease on life. Soon came southbound Amtrak train 97, the Silver Meteor, shortly after. After 97 left the station, I cruised down to Boynton Beach, where I saw a northbound Brightline train at Minor Road. With this train, I had now seen 6 Florida railroads in one day. Now, if you think that concludes this video, you'd be mistaken. After I stopped back home to grab some dinner, I battled some heavy traffic all the way down to Northeast 87th Street in Miami, where I met up with the FEC Christmas train again. The cars and locomotive were all decked out in Christmas lights, and as darkness hit, they really shone through at this location. The Christmas train was also greeted by several Brightline trains at this location. After the Christmas train left, I ventured further south, where I stumbled upon northbound FEC train 292, a unit rock train to Fort Pierce from Miami. Later, after 292 passed, I ventured to Northeast 71st Street, where I found just what I was looking for. This is Brightline's Polar Express excursion train operating out of Miami Central Station to Little River in Miami. On this train, staff would act out various scenes from the motion picture released in 2004, based on the classic book written by Chris Van Allsburg. In addition to having their tickets punched, passengers would be served hot chocolate and shortbread. The consist includes 2 Siemens-built SCB-40 Charger locomotives and 8 passenger coaches with red and green colors. This train would run at about 10 miles an hour in both directions and would stop for several minutes at Little River to wait for 2 Brightline trains to pass. The wait was tedious, but it was worth it. With 2 blasts of the horn, Brightline's Polar Express was on its way back to Miami Central Station. With very little light at this location, I was concerned that the camera would lose focus, but thankfully the shot turned out well. And with the Polar Express out of sight, this insanely long day was finished. As my coffee was beginning to wear off, I headed home and jumped into bed for a well-deserved rest. This was certainly a fun-filled, festive adventure chasing all these trains, and I would like to thank US Sugar, Sugar Express, Toys for Tots, the US Marines, the Florida East Coast Railway, and Brightline for making all these events possible. As always, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. This is Casual Rail Fan, out.